but I am going to Dublin,
Good.
and I was very impressed by the record office. You know, the library as you know, when the library and all the records that was bombed in 1922 has all been restored by digital.
Do you know? I was looking at this about about the bombing of the Dublin Library in 1916.
Well, it was the No, 1922.
How can they digitize? How can they digitize a record that was destroyed?
1922 it was. Now everyone gets this mixed up because it's the Civil War.
Right, okay.
But
yeah, I get the point, right? But how
I
can
don't
they digitize?
know. I don't know.
How can they digitize a record that was destroyed?
I don't know, but they have been working with a lot of sources to try and, you know, lots of places to try and.
Okay.
What's the name of the island?
Right, guys, right, okay. Right, thanks for that, Anne. Right, Del, anything you want to say? Because we've got to crack on.
Yes, because my wife's family, from whichever side, her great, whatever it was, grandfather, was one of the ones who looked after the island by Cork, where they looked after prisoners and stuff. Yeah, I'll have to get it to sort it out.
Yes, we'll get more information about that.
No, it's okay.
We'll get more information about that soon. Thanks, Del.
I
thank you.
Didn't realise.
Good. Right. Any other news from anybody in Landsworth Major, please?
No.
No. Okay. Right. Okay. Right. We are going to start. And anyway, welcome to what we're doing today. We are live. We are on YouTube, where we are recording, and I would just like to say that welcome to this session today, and the Archaeology Company online session, which will be one of two classes that will remain active going in through to September. I would like to say that we're going to be looking at Carr today, and I've mentioned Carr consistently over the past few months, even when we were doing Paleolithic archaeology, and we're going to be doing Carr in two parts. So I've got to give you a word of warning about the way we're going to be doing Carr today, that we're not going to be specifically looking at the two types of structures that have been found at Carr. The one main type of structure that's been found at Carr, and the actual village at Carr that's been found. So that's going to be next week. So anyone who's got any questions about that, probably just keep them until next week. And we're going to be looking at the decorated pendant that was also found at Carr very, very recently. Now, one thing I would say about Carr is that it's a prototype site for the Mesolithic period. It's a site that we believed told us everything about the Mesolithic period because nothing else had been found. It was excavated by Graham Clark in 1948. I do admit I'd made a mistake over the past few weeks when I mentioned Gordon Child had actually excavated at Carr. I was incorrect. It was Graham Clark. So looking at Carr, looking at this massively important site, one thing I wanted to do was to look at all the other sites and the relevance of all those other sites in overrun with just looking at one type of site. So what I'm trying to get at is that the Mesolithic period in Britain is about those footprints that are being found recently on the western coast of northern England. It's about Hawick. It's about other footprints that have been found at Goldcliff. It's about the site of Lunt. It's about all those other sites, all those other intricacies about the Mesolithic period and what the Mesolithic period is. Trees, limpet mounds, settlement, hunter-gatherer, hazelnuts, settlements here and there. It's about all that. And now we're looking at Star Carr properly. Right, I didn't want us to obsess about one single site, which I must admit I've done in the past. We've looked in the Mesolithic period, and we've gone into Star Carr. We spent a couple of weeks on it. We've gone directly into the Neolithic period, but things have massively changed. Things have massively changed in our understanding of the Mesolithic period being a key, massive, fascinating area of the Mesolithic period. And one thing I will recap is about the footprints from last week. The lecture last week about the footprints that have been found very, very recently on the 31st of May 2022 up on the west coast. Those amazing footprints of human beings, amazing footprints of auroch, amazing footprints of deer, amazing footprints of crane, and so on and so on. I felt that was an amazing way of looking at the Mesolithic period, a human way of looking at the Mesolithic period. Footsteps that you see that are so clear and so clean and so perfect that they could have been footprints made an hour ago. And I remember doing this in a presentation down here last night. When we were doing a presentation last night, I had people encapsulated with this, and it was people were gobsmacked over the definition of the footprints on how distant but how close in time and memory these footprints are. The idea that you can see these footprints now, you can walk alongside these footprints and create very faint footprints yourself, and in a few hours' time, those footprints from 8,000 years ago are washed away alongside your footprints. So what I am going to do now is I'm going to go directly looking at Star Carr. We're going to look at some really nice images. And we're going to try and paint the picture of Star Carr. So, and the picture that we're going to paint of Star Carr is a picture that might be very different from what we've looked at before. As I say, there are items, there's information about Star Carr that we're going to be looking at, that we are going to feature next week, and we might actually do Star Carr over 3 weeks. So don't feel for one moment that we're just going to be obsessing over an archaeological site and just thinking, well, you know, we've had enough of that the first week. But what I'd like to do is really go into detail with this site. And then the following week, looking at Blinkdean, a little bit more about Lunt Meadows, which we've already done. I said that we come back to that. We got lots of stuff to still look at the Mesolithic period before we go into the Neolithic period. And remember, and be very, very clear on this, that just because these things occur in the Mesolithic period doesn't mean to say they didn't happen before, and doesn't mean to say they didn't happen after. It's just that we look at certain time capsules within the Mesolithic period that are more Mesolithic than before and after. That's all we're talking about. There were boats in the Paleolithic period. There were wooden boats in the Mesolithic. There were boats in the Paleolithic period. There were boats in the Mesolithic period, as there are boats in the Neolithic period. But we got lots more evidence of boats in the Mesolithic period. And strangely enough, this is one thing that I didn't say last week. One thing that I didn't stress last week. One thing that I should be stressing now. That if anyone's done any research on this, that they can say I'm totally wrong, right? But we don't have any period in British history that we've actually got preserved footprints in mud. We've only seemingly got them in the Mesolithic period. Might have a tiny bit of overlap in the Neolithic, maybe a little bit of overlap before in caves. But in Britain itself, footprints are a sign of Mesolithic activity. We don't find Roman footprints in Britain. We find Roman footprints preserved in clay tiles, but I'm sorry, that don't count. They've got to be in clay that can be washed away by the sea at any time. We don't find it in any other period. So if we're writing down a chronology of what we feel and understand the Mesolithic is about, it's about footprints as well. People have walked in Britain before and after the Mesolithic period. They've walked in the mud, but those footprints are not preserved, and that's a really important key point. So what we need to think about is Star Carr is to be found on the North Yorkshire coastline, or near the North Yorkshire coastline, south of Scarborough. To put it in context, it's south of Hawick, and it's within that belt of trees that have been established by at least 11,000 years ago. The dates for Star Carr blow our minds. What we used to think about Star Carr, archaeological evidence from 8,000 years ago, end of the Mesolithic period, 9,000 years ago, coming into the middle of the Mesolithic period. Star Carr itself is a time capsule, an echo, a sense of location, a sense of now, a sense of then, a sense of everything that takes us back to the beginnings, the echoes, the starts, the opening up of the Mesolithic period. And many things that we could say about Star Carr conflict. They starkly hit each other. There are lines through the paper that go in a different direction. There are nuances, there are changes, there are alterations of a site that was used over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So we can never get those very footsteps that happened at a certain time. Everything happened at Star Carr over 800 years, over 900 years, over longer, over shorter. And the thing is, this is what Star Carr is about. Everything's conjoined, everything's mixed up, everything's confused, but it still is the Mesolithic period at Star Carr. So people didn't wake up at Star Carr and think it was the Mesolithic period, and people didn't go to sleep at Star Carr and go into the Neolithic period. That's nonsense. Mesolithic prototype site. This is the site that we used to always talk about, Star Carr. We know so much more in archaeology. And I would say that I'm going to make 2 points. I'm going to say this, that it seems now that in British archaeology, we are obsessing with Roman archaeology again, and we're obsessing with prehistoric archaeology. Seems that nobody seems to be talking about the medieval period, and nobody seems to be talking about the Vikings much these days. And people don't seem to be talking about the Iron Age and the Bronze Age, but people seem to be talking about the Mesolithic period, the Mesolithic period, the Mesolithic period, right? But one thing is, even though there's these renaissances in archaeology, in Britain, archaeology is in a very, very bad state in Britain at this minute, and we're seeing a massive decline in teachers being taught involving archaeology. University courses disappearing, university departments closing, fewer programs on television to do with archaeology. So we're in a moment that we've got this wonderful, interesting data coming to us, but the audience is getting smaller and smaller, and then the interest is waning, which is unfortunate. But one day, everything that's being excavated now, everything that we're understanding now, will be put on the bones of history, and we'll be able to see so much more, these echoes from the past, not just these footprints. Do you know what, right? Again, I'm obsessing about these footprints from last week. I don't know of anything in British archaeology that is as close as touching the past as those footprints. I cannot imagine anything else. And when I do my live presentations, where we've got this all worked out, that we're going to have huge photographs of these images on a screen behind us, projected, and all the rest of it. And I'm going to be visiting some of these sites before I do my live evenings looking at the archaeology. And I don't know anything that touches the past as close as this. Bones don't do it, flint don't do it. Nothing does it. But when we look at Star Carr, we've got wood, we've got other things that we don't find at other sites. So Star Carr, close but not there with the footprints that we're finding at Formby, and we're finding at Goldcliff. So Star Carr itself, reconstructed image alongside many reconstructed image, a lake village on the projecting of the beds of the lake at Flixton at Star Carr. Remember, when we think about Star Carr thousands of years ago, 8,000 years ago, 11, 12,000 years ago, such a long time ago, right? This is why those footprints off the west coast were so close to touching history. But this is 12,000 years ago. 12,000 years ago, Star Carr itself was 15, 20 miles away from the coast. So what? All that projected stuff that we feel about Star Carr is always evolving, always changing. Dates for Star Carr, dates. 9,300 years BC. That's 11,300 years ago. Give or take 100, give or take 50 years. 11,300 years ago, we're seeing the archaeology at Carr. So long ago. And we think people are at Carr, continuous. Some people say on and off. Some say this and that, whatever, right? But there's archaeological evidence, continuous, semi-continuous, however you want to look at it, going to approximately 10,480 years BC. Quite precise there. Maybe we'll check in the 10,481 years BC. But the fact of the matter is, people are at the site for a good part of 800 years, which is absolutely amazing. And when we do think about the Mesolithic at this time, there's leaps, there's changes, there's alterations, there's differences at the site. There's huge things differently changing at this site. We don't wake up and we don't see the same thing going on all the time. We don't see certain things being used for the same reason. For example, we've got these antler skull caps. We've got these antler skull caps. What were these being used for initially? Were they being used for ceremony? Oh, I don't like that word. Were they being used for votive offerings? Oh, I don't like that one. Were they actually being used for hunting? Were they being used for respective reasons? Were they being used for something else? Were they being used for decorative reasons? Why can't these people have decoration? Or maybe they were being used for all these things. The thing is, over 8,000 years, these things are being used for everything. For example, when Turner visited Ueni Priory in 1897, when he visited Ueni Priory, he saw Ueni Priory being used as a stable. He saw Ueni Priory used for chickens to be looked after. He saw Ueni Priory being used as a hayloft. My God, who would have thought about that when they built Ueni Priory? It was a priory, for Pete's sake. It was a place of God. And now it's being used as a stable. And that is over a similar time period that you see what's going on at Carr. In fact, a shorter time period at Ueni. The Carr is actually being used from the 1100s, 1150, 1130, 1150, and Turner gets there in the late 1700s. Massive changes of use, massive changes in religion. So when you think about Carr, the interpretation of the archaeological evidence can change and alter wherever the boat takes you, and actually wherever the boat takes you. You know, this lake-like landscape at Carr takes us through a world that looks like this. What's going on? It's a field. How dare we? It's a field today. But back then, it was a great lake, Lake Flixton, right? It was a glacial lake. The site was occupied during the Mesolithic period. We use the word early, through changes in temperature that we could only believe or disbelieve. For example, when we think about Carr, we think about, there were times at Carr that the temperature was very similar to our temperatures today. And sometimes it was colder than today. Sometimes it was warmer than today. And we moan and groan about global warming and global change and all the rest of it. And we're thinking, well, actually, throughout the Mesolithic period and Neolithic period, the temperature warmed up. In fact, today's temperature is 1 or 2 degrees colder than the temperatures that may have been reached in the beginning of the Bronze Age and periods in the Roman period. The best thing to do with climate change is to get rid of heaps of the human population, but that's something else. The fact of the matter is, when we look at this landscape, it's very different today. It's very different in the past, but there are some similarities between today and the past. It's except the peaty landscape has been drained. The great glacial lakes within the inner heart of Great Britain, the beating heart of Great Britain, where Lake Flixton used to be, all those glacial lakes have melted away. It's very interesting that the glacial lakes have melted away from 12,000 years ago to create these Great Lakes across Britain, where people lived a marginal lifestyle. We'll take that word marginal lifestyle in a minute. But we're also looking at the rising of sea level up to 100 meters out there on the North Sea, the Irish Sea, and the rest of the coast of Britain. we use the word marginalized. The problem is using the word marginalized in a Mesolithic context is so much about what does marginalized mean? Well, the greatest threat to our human ancestors back then wasn't humans. The population in the Mesolithic period it was in the few thousands. It was very unlikely that you'd come across another human being for years, let alone in your own lifetime. You could have been living with your family of 10, 15, 20 people. You could have lived 30 years and not seen another person from another community group your entire life, right? So this is what we're talking about. So the great threat to human beings was actually trees. And the thing is, people managed to get into these boggy, marginalized areas because they were safe. They were safe from the animals. They were safe from not being able to cope with woodland areas. Like the great dark unknown, which are those woodland areas? So some of the tools and paraphernalia in front of us from this wonderful Mesolithic period. And you are seeing these images, yes?
Yeah, no.
What? You
No.
haven't been seeing images from day one?
Are you sorry?
Hang on. Nobody's chosen to tell me that I haven't been screen sharing for 30 minutes and I've been moving the screen.
Oh, right. No, we haven't seen them.
Oh,
No.
God.
You didn't say you were going to go.
No, I did contact Anne.
Right, I thought I was sharing a screen 30 minutes ago. Oh,
Because I
God.
met Anne.
Yeah.
Right,
Oh,
okay. I had been describing images and nobody told me. Right, okay.
Well, we thought you were being very...
Okay.
Okay.
I had said this reconstruction in front of me and nobody... Right, okay, fair enough. So we got this reconstruction in front of us.
Right, lovely.
This is given a perspective of what the Mesolithic period looked like. Just a perspective. And again, rushing through these images so we can get these sort of beautiful islets. I did mention that we were looking at an image, the islets and the antlers there. And this is what, as I said, this is what Lake Flixton looks like today, a completely different landscape. We could have gone the whole lecture then without showing you a single image, but not to worry. And as I said, looking at this image here, we've got some of the paraphernalia that is associated with our star car. So what we've got again?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I've done a course on Star Carr, one of those online things.
Yeah.
And I was looking forward to this, so thank you for doing it.
Right, it's my pleasure. Right, crack on. So what we are looking at is, thank you. What we are looking at some of the paraphernalia, and basically just sort of keying in that thing as well. These Great Lakes, they're going to drain away. They're going to create these sort of marshy peat areas, and then they're going to dry out, and then they're going to be drained in later generations. So what we've got is obviously the sea rising, as we've mentioned, and eventually we look at Britain being disconnected from Europe. So what we've got at the site, the material being excavated at this site grows in number because excavations have been more or less continuous at Star Carr since 1947. The guy who originally discovered the site, John Moore, who we don't give much credit for, he was there in 1947. The excavations were then taken over by the very eminent Graham Clark. And it's his work that we look at. Graham Clark made mistakes. But then again, we all make mistakes in archaeology. It's all to do with interpretation, and it's all to do with science, and it's all to do with preservation. Even though Graham Clark made mistakes, as we all do, Graham Clark made the groundbreaking decision when he had finished the excavations to leave most of the timber on site. And bury it back over with peat. So it meant that future generations could look at the site and reinterpret his work, whether his interpretations of the work were accurate or not. So what we've got 21 red deer stag skull caps excavated over that period of time, and we've got these harpoons, these projectile points made of red deer antler. Now, one of the things is obviously antlers these deer caps. These are absolutely massively important to these people, right? Hugely important to these people. Now, why they are so important, as I've said, you could interpret them in a million different ways, right? You could have a load of different inferred meanings, and I say a million different ways from one person's perspective. They did this, they did that, and all the rest of it. However, again, what these may have been used for, as I'm repeating, could have been something at the beginning, as to something different at the end. And maybe after they'd had a few years of use, they decided to place them into the boggy-like landscape that is now occurring around this once beautiful, non-stagnant lake at Flixton, which is now starting to clog up. Why people left the site, we do not know. What we do find at Carr is that much of the archaeology that is preserved because of the waterlogged conditions associated with the peat bog. Now, what we do find is we've got these as harpoons. We've got these as projectile points. What were they being used for? Were the harpoons being used for fishing? Were the harpoons being used for eels? Were the projectile points themselves used for hunting game? Were they used for other purposes? Yeah, the thing is, again, all these objects, all these artifacts have more inferred meanings than we give them credit for. You could pick up a harpoon and say that's definitely used for that's definitely used for fishing. We could look at a projectile point, and if you're a male, you might think that that was used for killing other human beings, but there weren't other human beings to kill. And if you go out killing other human beings, then what's the story going to be about? We're not going to be around today. We're not going to be here because too many human beings are no longer with us, and we wouldn't have evolved, and so on and so on. So I don't believe that in the Mesolithic period, even in the Neolithic period, even in much of the Bronze Age, I don't believe we were out killing other human beings for 1 minute. Most of what we do see in the archaeological evidence tells us that not a single human being was killed by another human being for most of this period. So this is wonderful, Nikki Milner. And Nikki Milner, there she is, and she's excavating away, looking at the same archaeology that was being excavated by Graham Clark back in 1948. One point to be made about this wonderful period, this wonderful site of Carr. This is the thing, this is the point to be made, right? Is that alongside the footprints that we've discovered across other areas of Great Britain, along the coast, and note that the footprints are found around the coast and nowhere else, right? Is that the most evidence that we used to find from the Mesolithic period up until 1948 was stone tools. That's all we had, stone tools. Maybe a bit of evidence of a fireplace, and that's it, stone tools, nothing. We don't really get pottery in this period, right? Or evidence that they may have used clay vessels, but then again, those clay vessels are not fired ceramics. So the thing is, when we do look at Carr, the evidence boils like a cauldron. There is so much to look at. And Graham Clark was very much into that. If I've made mistakes with interpretation, the archaeology is going to be still there in future generations to prove or disprove what I'm saying with the archaeology, right? And this is really, really important. So again, Nikki Milner, and most of the archaeological departments that have been excavated at Carr over the years are no longer with us, which is a shame. But obviously, the archaeologists are still with us, and so here we go. We've got these. These have been spread over various museums across Britain. We've got them in the Yorkshire Museum, we've got them in the British Museum, and so on. To give you an idea of what these look like and what these were about. And obviously, one thing that I do say when you're looking at cabinets, and they say that these were used for this and that, and you've got to ask the question, these were used for an incredible length of time, and what people thought they could have been used for changes, and what they were actually used for changes as well. So the site discovered in 1947 by John Moore, again, John Moore, a local amateur archaeologist, up the local amateur archaeologist. He's the site who discovered. He's the one who discovered the site. Now, the thing is, when we think about Star Carr, if John Moore hadn't have found the site when he found it, it would never have been found, I do believe. Or maybe if it was found, it would have been found much later after the landscape of Star Carr was drained, and the archaeological preservation wouldn't have been as good. This is the thing. There are sites out there like Star Carr still to be discovered, and we're finding them, right? But not as well preserved as Star Carr. And the thing is, when we shout about Star Carr and we think about Star Carr, again, what we do think about is the level of preservation alongside the lake margins of Star Carr. And again, to try and do justice to Star Carr in one single lecture today will fail. This is why I'm giving you images. This is why I'm giving you information. This is why I'm giving you the pot of information and the facts. So next week we can look at the individual types of structures and the decorated pendant. So we've got an extremely rare site. It's not unique, because other sites are coming out like this now. But it's extremely rare types of artifacts, like the footprints that we've been seeing last week. So the original excavations, again, reinterpretation, looking at the original archaeology. You know, what is this about? Is this about a platform? Is this platform used for fishing? Were there buildings above this? You know, all these questions. Was it permanent use? Was it temporary use? Again, we'll look at some of that information next week. So again, the environmental context, right? And one thing I need to do is, I should have had, but what I did do today was I've got to clear my cache of images on this. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of a location for some. So this is in memory of Ellen, who would always say, "Well, where the hell are these? Where the hell is Star Carr? I want to know." So there we go. And what we do have, we're going to be looking at this plan next week. This is an archaeological plan of Star Carr. But where is Star Carr? Let's find it. So let's just sort of look at the, let's get with the images and let's get a map. This is why Google is so good, so we can nail where Star Carr is. Right, okay, Star Carr and Star Carr location. It would help if it came up, right, Star Carr Lakes. Right, there we go. Let's go with it. Good, and are we going to get it? Right, here we go. And there it is. So if we go, right, there we go. So basically, there's Scarborough, right? And just basically come down that road a little bit further over from Filey is in fact Star Carr. So I want to nail it on this. I don't know why my Google isn't massively. There it is. There's our Star Carr. Now, Star Carr lakes and ponds today. Okay, but nearby is a place known as Flixton. To try and get that again, there it nailing it, and there we go. And we've got basically 5 miles south or thereabouts from Scarborough. So basically what we do have is there is the coastline today, right? And if we look out there, if we take that 20 miles or more, 25 miles, that is where the coast used to be. Now, one of the theories that we'll mention today, right, but we'll mention in detail next week, is one of the theories is that archaeologists talk about, some archaeologists talk about, not all, not me. Some archaeologists talk about Star Carr being a seasonal site, right? So they say that people lived at Star Carr in the summer months, and they lived along the coast in the winter months, right? And some people might say it's the other way around. But when they start to look at the archaeological evidence, they start to find that there's a full picture of archaeological evidence for all the seasons at Star Carr. So what is exactly going on? Counter argument, again, if you're living in a site some times of the year and you're living elsewhere other times of the year, some other people might occupy the site. Who's going to look after the site while you're away? Who's going to stop it from being destroyed by animals wandering around? Who's to say that other human beings didn't move in there? Well, that's probably unlikely, but all these different things, again, looking at next week. So Carr is now 99% underwater. There's some sort of watering pools there at the Vale of Pickering. So during the Mesolithic, the site was near the outflow of the melting glaciation. So it created what we would associate to be Lake Flixton, which is a dried up lake today. So what we've got is that slowly but surely, this is a great lake, but slowly but surely the water drains away. And over that 800 years, 900 years, what we do see is it all silts up and heats up. Now, one of the things that we talk about heating up is a peat bog a good place to live when you've got flies and other sort of mozzie type creatures around it, and you're just thinking, well, is it going to be a good place to live? The answer is probably no, but that might not be the reason why they moved away. We see people living in similar locations like Must Farm in Peterborough. That is a site that's come to us very, very recently over the last decade at Peterborough. We look at Must Farm dating back to 3,000 years ago. Similar situation, similar landscape. Site was abandoned under very, very strange circumstances. But again, this site's abandoned over strange circumstances, or is it abandoned over strange circumstances? Why do we always think that people abandon houses under strange circumstances? Right, now, I'll give you a metaphor. I'll give you an inference for this. Some of the islands off on the Hebridean coast, children leave their parents get elderly, one of the parents passes away, the other parent's left in the house, they get rushed to hospital, end up passing away in a hospital, the house is abandoned. Why is that a house abandoned under unusual circumstances? A site is naturally abandoned. Why do we have to have dramatic events to sort of maybe see that something's abandoned over strange circumstances? Maybe they didn't want to live there anymore, like people don't want to live in places today. This is a weird bit of a reconstruction. Did the houses look like that? Don't know. And basically what we're talking about, the other thing as well is this is not meant by this reconstruction. What they're saying is these are the timbers, and this is what the timbers look like today, or when they're excavated, and this is like a marshy landscape, what it used to look like, and there's one of the buildings, and they're hanging fish, and you're thinking, well, or is this showing that over time some of these buildings were abandoned? But people continue to all about the story. Maybe these people lived within an abandoned landscape. As people decided to build a new house, it wasn't suitable for them. They decided to build a new structure. Bingo. Vis-a-vis, that's what's going on. Do you know what I say about history and archaeology? Why is there such a big deal about interpreting the archaeology in this way and that way? Do you know, lots of archaeologists would say that, it's ceremony, right? It's ritual. It's religion, right? To be honest with you, I don't have time for religion. I've got my own form of religious belief that I don't share with anybody what it is. But I struggle to do that most of the time, right? These people in the past didn't have time for religion. They had time for survival, and that's what they did. That's how they did. That's how they carried on within this sort of linear society. When I say linear society, we're not talking about linear society as in building structures square and rectangular. We're talking about the line continuing, the continuance of evolution, continuance of movement, continuance of where they are within their perception. Perception always changes. And this was so good to look at the footprints last week. And it's so good that I'm going to be sort of getting that information and bringing it into a very live show. So during the period of Mesolithic occupation, what we do see, and sort of giving you an idea, I think this nuance gives us an idea, gives us a little bit of an idea. We know, for example, because of pollen evidence, and we know, for example, of seed evidence, and we know, for example, of wood evidence, that they lived within a landscape of birch, aspen, and willow, right? This surrounded the lake. And there was enough material to build the structures that they required. To build a building completely out of timber needs a lot of timber. Do you know, I'm building a roundhouse now, and I've got beams that I can hardly move by myself, right? But I'm slotting them in and so on, right? And that's a lot of material, a hell of a lot of material to build just one single structure. So they must have had a lot of material around them. They must have lived within this marginalized clearing of a lake to be able to build these structures. Vis-a-vis proof that you've got the building material and the trees around them to do it, for them to be able to survive and for them to be able to continually build more buildings. By no means do we know everything about the settlement, and we never ever will, right? But we've got enough evidence. And the other thing as well is we don't really know what they left behind when they left. Maybe they took some of the material with them. We do not know. At Must Farm, they certainly didn't, right? The site was set alight and everything collapsed and whatever. They even bowls on the table, but why ever they did that, we don't know. We never ever will. There's no human remains there. And this is one of the things, lots of these Mesolithic sites, we don't find human remains. We don't find the bones of these people. So finding the footprints is like putting your finger and touching the outline of the footprint from somebody who left a footprint 8,000 years ago, and touching this timber from the Star Carr is like touching where they hafted, they shaped, they created, they worked the wood, they honed the wood, and it's just everything that is so close to the past, so close. So again, during the period of Mesolithic occupation, the areas surrounding the lake would have been a mixed forest, woodland of birch, aspen, and willow. The lake edge and shallows would have been full of reeds, roofing material, reeds, storage containers. Wonderful. Reeds could be used for anything. Reeds can even be used for clothing. If you look at some Amazonian people. Reeds can be beaten if they're in their green state to make fiber. So there you go. Reeds can be used for anything. The roots of the reeds can be eaten. You know, you can use reeds for fire if you dry them out. There's loads of different things. You got water lily. The thing is, we sometimes look at the past in a very cavalier way. We sometimes look at the past in the way that we want to see the past, right? But maybe the people in the past saw the past as we see our landscape today. Yeah, water lilies. Did they look at little frogs and so on jumping on the water lilies? Right? Did they use the flowers for decoration around the home? We know that people have always used flowers for burial purposes. Back as far as these sort of Neanderthals, these boneheaded Neanderthals that we didn't give them much credit for until recent generations, highly intelligent individual hominids who evolved into us today used flowers. So we think of aquatic plants. You got so many things that are so close to us, and why not? And obviously lake levels would have dramatically changed and altered in response to the melting of the ice. You never know. For example, you never know. You never know. There's another way of looking at this. Maybe the ice was still melting 11,300 years ago. Maybe it was still melting and the water levels in the lake were rising. Maybe they abandoned some of the buildings because they were overtaken by the water levels. Think about that. And as the landscape altered and changed, they moved back into those areas as the water started to drain away to the former platforms and places that people used to live. Think about that. Think about that amazing thing in the past. The water levels are still rising. House abandoned over there. How dare the water take a house away from us? And then generations down the line, 300 years later, they see that little timber. You can see it now, can't you? See that timber sticking out of the water. And you're thinking, bloody hell, that's where our ancestors used to live. Let's go back over there and reoccupy that site. They're doing the same thing as us. They're sort of seeing the landscape with the change. With the changes always around us. The change is always around us today. You know, say for example, we live with change throughout our lives all the time. And one of the things that we do need to say is that we move around as people. We change what we're doing in our lives, like them in the past. So all of the evidence that we do see from this period is a web, a food web, a complex food web. I love that, a complex food web of plants and things and food, flora and fauna that could be digested, used, shaped and seen. Now, we always see mammals and animals in the past as sources of food. And, you know, for example, when people totally without any respect sort of take jipes out of the fact that I've got a turkey as a pet, right? So anyone who does that and says that oh, you know, they would like to eat my turkey, I would like to eat their cat, and I would like to eat their dog. How do they feel about that? And the point is, when we look at the past, people undoubtedly kept pets as well, and we see this with the inferred evidence at Hawick. You know, just because we see animal bones around the site, it doesn't mean to say that we ate them. It doesn't mean to say that they didn't have vegetarians in the past. And all these things need to be looked at. Just because we see animal bones doesn't mean to say that we ate the flesh of those animals. For example, the Przewalski horses of the past, of the Paleolithic period, and early forms of horses in the past, what we do see is that we're using those horses for milking, right? Now, did we eat their flesh? Did we use their skins? Were those horses used for riding and all these other things, all these things that we need to look at, the complex food web and resource management. So this is what I'm talking about. What I'm trying to say to you is it's not all about eating animals. And the other thing as well is, just because we find evidence of beaver at this site, the Star Carr, just because we find evidence of wolf doesn't mean to say that they're eating those animals. Those animals may have just died there and then. They may have been part of the landscape. They may have had great respect. This is the thing. Just because we're using red deer for one purpose at one time and eating the flesh of that red deer doesn't mean to say that we didn't respect that animal later on or not eat the flesh. One minute we might be eating wolf meat, the next minute we might be using a wolf as a pet, therefore a dog, and so on and so on. So all these things, again, looking at those earlier lectures that we looked at before, the archaeological evidence of Goff's Cave, and the likes of Robin Hood Cave, and all the rest of it at Cheddar Gorge, and we're thinking that we're seeing human remains deposited with animal remains, treated with great respect, working the bones and all the rest of it. Did they actually eat that flesh? Is there evidence they ate the flesh, or did they respect those animals and they gave them what could be said as some kind of ceremonial sort of a cast off in the ground? Because they respected those animals. We don't know. There's so many different ways of looking at the past, and there's so many different ways of looking at the now. The mammals that we have evidence for include herbivores, such as beaver, red deer, roe deer, elk, wonderful. Those big bloody elks. Aurochs, oh God, that must have been quite frightening. Wild boar and hare. You could say that the wild boar is slightly carnivorous because it eats anything. All those animals have other uses as well. For example, the wild boar would be quite happy to eat human fecal matter, as some wild boar today are actually used to eat human fecal matter, a way of digesting human fecal matter, meaning that you don't have human waste hanging around the site. Very good way of managing the landscape. Carnivores, evidence of carnivores at the site, such as wolf, lynx, bear, fox, pine marten. We don't often hear that. We don't often hear about the lynx much either. Badger, hedgehog. So again, bear. Evidence of bear. Wow, cool, wonderful. So again, what we're doing, we're not presuming about the landscape. We know about the landscape. We read the landscape. We understand the landscape. We're connected with the landscape. We see that landscape is alive without all its flora and fauna. So key artifacts, along with the flints that are characteristic of Mesolithic sites, there were a large number of objects made of red deer and elk antler, elk bone, auroch bone. and even one piece of bird bone being used. Again, if we think about all of this, if we go back to that slide, actually, we think about sort of, actually, we've strange enough, what we've done, we've done some bias in this lecture. We've ignored that there's flint artifacts there, and we've ignored that there's stone artifacts there, stone pendants, one that we're going to look at next week. And this is the danger, you see. We've got so excited with all the organic stuff, and now, in a way, we're disregarding the lithic stuff. We're disregarding the chert object. We're disregarding the flint objects. So this is why last week, when we looked at the footprints, I was obsessed by showing you the crane footprints. I was obsessed by showing you the auroch footprints. All very, very important when we look at this key site in the Mesolithic period. Again, all these different images are wonderful. That is obviously the Haik site reconstruction and the way of looking at things. And again, looking at the front of that book, Star Carr, with the names Nicky Milner, key excavator at the site in the past couple of decades, Tim Cahandler Hall, again, another key excavator, Barry Taylor and Chantal Conyer. And again, looking again, archaeology for all, love it. But this is archaeology for all. It's the sense of interpretation. It's a sense of ownership. It's a sense of seeing what the past was like through many different eyes. The past back then was seen through many different eyes, many different ways of evolving the past within their eyes. Again, we did a bit of inference earlier on when I said we've got these buildings within their context thousands of years ago, places that were lived in, and then they're thinking, oh, we've got the timber there, we'll just move over there, and hopefully some of the timber's okay, and we'll sort of live there as well. So we've got all that going on. What we also see with the site is other things that must have been brought some distances. I'm obsessed with the locality. I'm obsessed with the in moment. Now we've got to go out of moment, and we've got to think about the other objects that these people are bringing onto site, such as shale, so that they could work shale. This is an interesting one. Hematite. My eyes are wobbling here. Hematite. But they didn't have iron. No, this is hematite being used for other reasons. Hematite being used for other reasons at this time. Can you imagine a stone which shone with gold flecks coming out? Again, I'm just showing you some other images. I'm just trying to get to another image a minute. So obviously, the site is treated in great reverence. You've even got postage stamps. Can you remember a year or so ago, we'd send out stuff to everybody, and we'd go out of our way and find wonderful decorated postage stamps. Love to have found this back in the day. Again, what I'd like to do is just put that up there. That there. There we go. That's an object that's been found very recently, which we're going to be doing next week. And I'm showing you a very, very sort of unclear image deliberately, because we're going to be looking at the very clear images next week. This is an object that's been found at the site. This is a stone object, right? It's a decorated pendant, right? And this itself is one of the oldest known pieces of Mesolithic art in Britain. Amazing, this, absolutely amazing that this is actually being found there. Again, with this. So what we've got overnight, I've basically said, oh, actually, we've got some non-organic objects. We've got organic objects at the site. This is a bit of yin and yang now, isn't it? So again, this is a way that they used to portray the site and what was going on the site. Again, why not? But all of these activities may have not have occurred at one point. All of these activities may have actually occurred at different periods in time. And we chuck in Otzi the Iceman now. What? Because when we chuck in Otzi the Iceman, what we do think about is tightly rolled pieces of birch bark and pieces of birch resin, pitch, or tar that's been found at the site. Very similar evidence, the rolled pieces of bark that was found by Otzi the Iceman. So now what we've got this evidence being found at the site, right? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I might look at some of the birch bark next week. I am not sure if we've got time, or maybe that may lead into a third lecture, maybe leading to another lecture at the same time. Maybe we might do 2.5 lectures at Star Carr. I don't know. But the birch bark, again, evidence that they're making fires, right? We've got evidence of charring, right? Yeah, that's clear. That's clear. That's there. But we've got evidence of pitch or tar, which could be used for mounting some of the bodkins on your shafts for using for hunting, for using for your bow and arrow, for example. Maybe the evidence of tar and pitch could be used as a fuel. We don't know. So, but again, or maybe it was used for everything. One thing in the past is that we can never see the past as one vehicle. We can never see the past as one model meets all answers. For example, we might find bits of broken pottery on a Roman site, right? And we're thinking, well, obviously that was broken there and then. Well, they might have actually used the pottery for gravel. They might have actually used the pottery in the building industry after it long since had its use and it had been broken up. So there's different ways of looking at things. The flint itself, found at Star Carr, came from nearby beaches that may have been up to between 12, 15, 20 miles away. And again, finding most of the flint would have had to have been collected along the beaches because that's where it's being located. Some of it may have been left by glacial dropping within the moraines. But again, they're bringing artifacts onto the site. Again, that list, amber would have had to have come from sea contexts. Some of the iron pyrites, that's a really interesting one. The iron pyrites, we've got the stone itself, and you've got the little flecks of gold sticking out at you. It's not gold, it's fake gold, right? Fool's gold. Iron pyrites, so that looks at you, right? And you're thinking, well, wow, that must have been collected from the coast. So again, what I'd like to do, again, we just keep looking at these images, right? And we're looking at that. I love it. Maybe I'm not being fair about Star Carr in some of the ways that I'm talking about it. I may have given the impression it's not as important as the footprints that we've looked at. Bloody hell, it is as important as the footprints we're looking at. But I wanted to sort of get to the sense of connection. I see more connection with the footprints than I do at Star Carr. But the archaeological evidence at Star Carr is enlightening. It's an enlightening glow, helping us understand the Mesolithic period. I needed to put that point in there. And maybe my equivalent of looking at the archaeological evidence at for example, up on the west coast and at Goldcliff, the equivalent of Star Carr would be looking at a collection of bones, lots of animal bones associated with your deer, animal bones. There are fish bones in there as well. There are fowl bones, all that type of stuff. In amongst that are some of the barb points. Now we mentioned what the barb points are, and if we sort of go a little bit forward, hang on, barb points. We find a barb point. Hang on, barb point. There, barb point. Straight out the mud. Look at it. Ooh. Again, that's straight out the mud. Straight out the peat, straight out the mud. It's straight there. The person holding that is the first person to hold that object in 10,500 years. The first person to hold that object in thousands of years.
What?
That's a barbed point. Basically, what we've got there is those barbs along there, and you've got a point there, barb point. That you can see the size, 8 centimeters long, or what have you. And we know obviously about the antler frontlets. 21 of them being found. Barb points are made of the antler of red deer stags. 8 centimeters in length, and some can even be longer. 38 centimeters, 40 centimeters in length. Amazing. And what we've got surviving in the archaeology, I'm using the word surviving in the archaeology. We've got approximately just over 200 examples of these surviving in British archaeology. Surviving. I'm going to explain what that word means in a moment. 195 plus examples have been found at Star Carr. Some may have been lost over the years through excavation. 195 examples have been recorded at Star Carr. 10 have been recorded elsewhere. 10, 15 have been recorded elsewhere. But we do know that more have been discovered because of dredging out there from Doggerland. We know that Hull Museum contained a number of these objects up until it was bombed by the Norwegian Luftwaffe in 1941. So the point is that these objects themselves are incredibly close again to what maybe this was never used. Maybe whatever it was meant to be used for, it never came into that. This one looks very intact, but there are barb points that have been deliberately broken, right? So if we go to one of the crowning glories, sorry about the pun, okay? Do you know what? We'll just use that one now. I'm going back a bit. Hang on a minute. Let's just sort of, there we go. Look at that there. Look at that there. That dates to 11,300 years ago. Amazing. This was one found in 2015. Amazing that these are still being found. Amazing bit of archaeology, right? Now, that would be quite heavy with the complete finds coming off it. It would be completely heavy. And what we've got is that many of these have been deliberately broken and the antlers detached. We do find others that have the antlers attached. Why they're deliberately broken, very, very interesting. Some also have the full length, as I've said, the antler frontlets, red deer, stag, skulls, and the 21 antler frontlets are sufficiently complete to see how they have been manufactured. And what we've got is two holes clearly perforated through the skull with a flint tool, and the inside of the skull cap was smoothed. So that's the exterior, and that's the interior, and that's a section of it there. So you can get an idea of the section over there, right on the left. And the antlers on each frontlet have been carefully trimmed. Maybe not so much on this one, but most of them, perhaps to reduce weight. It seems very likely that these modifications are designed to allow the frontlets to be used as headgear. Finds from the site, as we've already mentioned, can be found in the British Museum, Yorkshire Museum in York, and the Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology at Cambridge, and examples in the Scarborough Museum. And again, all these bits of evidence, it's so odd. It's so odd having this archaeological evidence. Again, thousands of years old, but very, very well preserved. Now, there's another point to be made here. Is the archaeological evidence that we're seeing only to be found at Star Carr? We've got other little bits of evidence like this elsewhere. But because of the preservation at Star Carr, like the Limpet Mounds and Ronse, Hebridean Islands, it might be that those are the conditions to preserve things. They may have used these all the way across the country for different purposes, right? Or maybe they just mainly used them at this site. We don't know. We don't really know. Maybe these people had more of an intercourse with these animals than elsewhere. Again, we do not know that. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to look at one of the other images. Okay, and there's the field, there's the excavations, more of these as well as we sort of pass on, some much bigger. I'd like to talk a tiny little bit about the buildings and sort of see a little bit more about that. And I've just realized that I've got a lot more to go through. So if I don't cover this sort of introduction today, then we can easily come back to it. Again, more of the antlers there, and you can see the barbs along them. One or two broken, maybe accidental, maybe deliberate. We don't know. Maybe through hunting. And again, there's our Nicky. That's not a very clear one. So, and again, hang on. We're going to use these two images. This one, got to give you an idea of the landscape. And these buildings, another way of reconstructing them, right? Instead of the timbers going all the way down to the ground, these are raised buildings. But again, more about this next week, which is going to be a very difficult task to put across. But I wanted to do a little bit of an introduction. So what we've got some images of the original archaeology there. What we've got is two types of buildings. We've got buildings out on the lake, and we've got buildings actually on land, on dry land. So the buildings on dry land, the post holes and the post holes in the lake itself. So what we've got, this is actually showing some of the trees associated with the landward bits of the site, which were sort of close to the landward bits of the site, sort of on the margins of the lake itself. So what we've got with the archaeology, and again, more of the excavations. Again, all that peaty area, within that they're excavating. Within that they're excavating evidence of flint, burning evidence. I did say there was burning evidence as well. Other artifacts, structures approximately 3.5 meters wide. Now this is rather interesting, because some of the evidence on the west and east coast show buildings of 6 meters wide. But then again, nobody's traveling from Morecambe Bay. Nobody's traveling from the Northumberland coastline going to these guys and say, oh, by the way, planning says you've got to build them 6 meters in diameter, right? So basically, what we're talking about is 3.5 meters wide. We get lots of posts. Posts themselves 20 centimeters in diameter. So, you know, these are chunky posts. These are the types of posts that you get from birch. Although I've got I was going to say hazel, but we've got a hazel tree that has quite a massive girth to it here, which is not all hazels are small. But again, when we're thinking about it, lots of the material around is only still growing. The woodland and the forest around this area, remember, is 11,300 years ago. The tree line is still moving north. The state tree line is still establishing. So what we do find is that many of these buildings, so there may have been as many, as my notes tell me, as 18 structures. Of 20, 30 structures, but we've identified at least 18 structures. Bloody hell, that's a lot more than Graham Clark found. A lot more than Graham Clark interpreted. So obviously, we're not having a go at Graham Clark, but what we're saying is Graham Clark based everything on what he was excavating, which is the right thing to do. What we've done now is found more and added to what Graham Clark was saying. Like, in principle, everything that Graham Clark was saying was close on some of the stuff that we're saying today, but he just interpreted it in different ways, how long the buildings were being occupied for. The other thing that we do know today is that the buildings were inevitably constructed in different ways, and we've seen various different ways that these buildings were actually constructed. And again, so if we go, hang on, keep going, look, there we go. So these show the roof lines going down to the ground. The other ones show actually a framework supporting the roof. Right, so we could say that at times some of these buildings were conical shapes. Some of these buildings were proper roundhouse shape. Some of these buildings were constructed using hides, thatch, turf, bark, timber, reeds, wigwam shape, whatever. They built in different ways over a long period of time. And they may have had one teepee-like building, one wigwam-type building, one type of roundhouse building over there. And they may have used these buildings for various different purposes. Now, one thing that we do say about these buildings from this time and always is that they're not really nice buildings to live in, right? How do we know that? How do we know that? How do we know that the floor wasn't raised? And how do we know that they didn't support beams in there? Why do we obsess over having beaten floors with earth that was getting clogged up with animal dung and human stuff all the time. How do we know that these buildings weren't raised? How do we know that it wasn't a raised floor in them? Because some of them see sunken floor levels. Like, so if you've got sunken underneath, and then you sort of put beams on top of that, la route along la plan de square, raised floor levels, dry feet, keeping the damp out, acting against osteoporosis and all these other things. So we're still learning, we're still understanding, and why not? These people had thousands of years to develop these buildings and so on. So radiocarbon dates indicate that indicate incredible long use of the site, and some of the buildings may have been used over an incredible length of time, and reuse and reoccupation and resiting and rehumbling and re-understanding, as we see at Hawick itself. Some more of the archaeological evidence. You know, you've got these pins, these pegs. You've got the bab piece there. So again, different ways of looking at the buildings. Here's another one, chuck in the dark. A large wooden platform has been discovered nearby on the shore of the former lake. Again, more of this next week. Not really interpreting this now. The earliest known example of carpentry in Europe. We don't really know. We don't really have precise dates for some of this stuff. So the occupation at the site might be much older, much greater, much be changing the boundaries of understanding within the Mesolithic period. And again, this is to be excited about. So timbers, we've also got evidence of aspen as well. Aspen, a great sort of tall growing tree. That's lots of the timbers are found at the site. Again, willow split along the grain using wedges. Why not? Why not wedges of wood or antler and so on, or stone or whatever you can get hold of? These were then laid in the boggy areas at the lake shore, presumably to provide firm footing, staked in. The extent of the wooden platform is not known, but it may be significantly larger and more complex undertaking than the house-like structures. So in other words, there's so much going on with the structures that I didn't want to do that today. I really didn't. I wanted to. And looking at that decorated pendant, as Del said earlier on, he'd done a course on this. So, you know, there are courses to be done on this out there online. So what are we talking about dates? Well, Graham Clark wouldn't have had a clue about the dates back then. And no, that's not dissing him at all. It's not dissing a very eminent archaeologist. He didn't have the dating techniques. So what about the roundabout dates? But now we've got is the radiocarbon dating that's given us dates, but thanks to Willard Libby, US scientist. Willard Libby from 1951 offering us radiocarbon dating, giving us dates in the 1960s, 1970s about the site. So what? And when we started looking about the Pavilan Cave forgery, when we look at the dates for that, the dates are always altered and evolved throughout the development of radiocarbon dating. That's probably to do with lots of contamination over the years with the bones anyway. And again, initial contamination. But when we look at this site, we've got clear evidence. And the one thing about this site is that they can go back and excavate. Right? They can go back and excavate. So this is the thing. When you go back and excavate the site, as we look through lots more of these images, and again, hang on a minute. Again, this is what, again, there you go. And this is a tiny little pond. This is Lake Flixton. That's all that's left of the lake. A tiny little watering pool in the winter months. So the radiocarbon dates of this that we can go back and look at the site dating back an amazing 11,335 years ago to around 10,440 years ago. Is it saying that people live there permanently? Is it saying episodic? Is it saying hunter-gatherer? What are we saying? We don't really know. The data's out there. And that itself is more recent excavations. There it is, not a very clear image. Let's see if we can get another one. Oh, there we go. That's a nice one. Sort of re-excavations there in the past decades or so. So it would be nice. It would be nice to sort of talk about the investigations at the site. So I haven't really mentioned much about how and the why and wherefores of the excavation. Discovered 1947 by John Moore, an amateur archaeologist. He noticed flints in the exposed soil of several recently dredged ditches in the eastern vale of Pickering. Now, there we go. He decided to go back in 1948 and do a little bit of an excavation and investigation. Why not? And he contacted the University of Cambridge, and lo and behold, the big boys come along and take away his glory. Contacted Professor Graham Clark. Graham Clark took all the glory for the excavations, and other archaeologists involved, such as Harry Godwin and somebody else from Scarborough Museum back then, and Arthur Roy Chapman was also involved. I don't usually give the name of archaeologists, but it's nice to sort of shine the lesser ones, like Moore, like John Moore. So Clark began his investigations with the explicit aim of building a more detailed picture of the Mesolithic environment and the ways in which people used it. Now, on his desk back in Cambridge, he had one or two harpoon points, and he had one or two other objects, and mainly stone microliths, and other stone axes and so on, maybe axes from Penman Mine. That's all he had. But he wanted to go to the site thanks to John Moore, and he wanted to find an organically preserved site from the Mesolithic period. And lo and behold, he bloody found it. Enabled the recovery of the plant and animal remains necessary for this. Clark, and to be honest with you, right, stop any criticism of Graham Clark. He did an amazing job of the excavations from 1948, 1949 to 1951, publishing his work in 1954. A seminal text, a seminal work, a prototype site for the Mesolithic period, and may only be the case for decades and decades until more archaeological evidence. Chepstow Hike was excavated in the Northumberland coastline. That's why we want to do Hike beforehand. So I could say instead of doing Carr and mentioning these other sites, and all right, he's done the Mesolithic period. That's it. We've done those other sites, and we know where they are now. Brilliant. That's how I wanted to do it. Because Clark didn't have any other parallels in Britain, he had to make parallels between sites in Denmark, and he had to look at type sites in Denmark because there was nothing like it in Britain. It is now recognized that many of Clark's inferences were slightly incorrect, but the excavation remains one of the most important in the study of British prehistory ever undertaken. The site in Maglemose in Denmark, and Maglemose, a massively famous site, Maglemose in Denmark, he compared our archaeology with theirs. Probably not the best thing to do, but that's all he had to go by. So let's not criticize that. But now these things have changed. So again, further investigation, the Lake Flixton landscape. So in 1977, archaeologists excavated again this landscape, slightly north of the Carr site, to try and find what was going on. Well, when they excavated there, in advance of the Carr landfill site, they discovered more Mesolithic material, which extended what we knew of the Carr prototype site. And the thing is, the point is that we've not only what Graham Clark said was that we've got this site and that's all we've got. Right? What?
James is trying to talk to you.
Who's trying to talk to me?
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, we're going to carry on. Well, we're right. Okay. If somebody wants to say something now, but we're not having a break. So who wants to say something quickly?
Oh, they're having a short break.
Right. Okay. They're having a short break. Well, okay, then I'm going to have a quick cup of tea, but it's only going to be 3 minutes. Okay. So we're going to have a 3-minute break. And if I lose my flow after the break, then yes. So we're going to have a 3-minute break. That's all. It's 12:01 and 12:03 and 12:04, and that's when we're coming back. So That's it. So, and we'll leave all the questions to the end. We'll just have a quick one now.
I
Hi,
You,
Del.
you two can have a chat.
Oh, you're all right. Are you all right, Del? Did you have
Oh.
trouble with your eyes?
no.
Oh,
Oh,
all right.
yeah, the sun's coming through the window. That's okay.
All right. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've been away for well, we've had a few things on,
Yeah,
wedding.
weddings and things. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, great.
so, oh, I saw Dorothy yesterday,
Yes. Do you think
parked outside the house.
did she where was she?
No, I parked outside the house. Me and my brother went to a funeral,
Oh, yes.
you know, as you do.
Yeah.
We parked outside the house because he wanted to go to the old castle.
Yeah.
He hasn't been there for a while.
Right.
Went there first, and then yeah,
I gotta stand up.
she's okay.
Yeah. She's okay. I know that Fred. Oh, not Fred. Oh, thanks for doing that anyway. I know what's his name? Oh, Bill. Yeah, just Bill and
Bill.
Pat on, you know, they said they wouldn't mind meeting up for coffee, you know.
Oh, it'd be nice.
But we haven't really started it yet. So I mean, what's happened? I mean, we could theoretically, we could have met on a Thursday afternoon, you know, if we'd wanted to. Oh no, Pat can't do that. That's what I mean. It's awkward, isn't it? It would have been quite nice to have gone to the old castle or have one there, you know.
The old castle's lovely now.
Just for a coffee and a chat about the morning, you know, the morning talk.
Yes, just to have a.
I just started singing on a Thursday, so it's every other Thursday. I do a sort of choir thing, you know.
Oh, nice.
And but we could do it the week I don't work, you know, the week I don't do it.
Yeah.
But we'll keep in touch anyway. That's the main thing.
Yeah, I'm back now, so
oh, good. Okay.
It's
so
just I've had lots of things on a Thursday, so I haven't been able to join.
Yeah.
I've told, you know, I've contacted Carl and said, look, I can't come today, and
yeah. Well, that's the most important thing, to keep in touch, isn't it?
Yeah.
I sent my money off, Carl.
Oh, well done, thank you.
I always just send it to the 70. The account.
I got to do
70.
that. Yes.
Go on, Del, if you don't send the money over now this minute, right, I'm going to send the boys over to slap your backside.
There we are then. I shall do it.
Actually, Del, I've been told that you got a big backside.
Have I?
Jane told me, she phoned me, she said the reason why I love Del, right, is because he's got a big backside. Oh my God, he's just gone to ask Jane now.
No, I haven't forgotten, sorry. It's just I have to do it at a certain point in the month.
No,
if you know
no
what
excuses. I mean. No excuses.
No.
I don't want any excuses.
No. It'll be done today.
Well, it better be, because, you know, if it's not done today, if it's not done today, I'm going to send Goff over.
Oh dear.
Goff don't take any message from people.
It could be worse. You could send Henri.
Oh, right. Henri's on holiday today, to be honest.
Oh, he's buying more wine, is he?
No, I don't know. Yeah, he's away somewhere. I don't know where he is.
Right, I'm going to get a drink.
Right, so what we're going to do, we're going to crack on now, folks. The reason why I wanted to talk through is because I was very aware of a phone call that's coming in from one of my children. But if that interferes with the lecture now, then it interferes with it. So Right, okay then. Let's crack on. So
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I know I'm a nuisance, but he was trying to talk to you anyway. And yeah, I mean, I've been trying to say something all the way through, but it's
go for it. Go for it.
well, no, I was just thinking, it's all to do with hunting, isn't it? Everything they're showing is, the antlers and everything. And I was thinking, yeah, maybe they use the antlers, the hats to get close to the, as like a decoy thing to get close to the closer to the deer so they could kill them,
But hang on a minute. Maybe they milk them.
Well, yeah. Well, there's male and female. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, maybe they milk them, and also, as they do in Scandinavia, they bloodlet them, and
right.
you can bloodlet them, and
So
it makes
there would be a lot of reasons why they would want to try and get closer to them.
The thing is, and when you think about it, right, this is the thing, and we're back with it now. So this is the thing. This nonsense that we've got, for example, right, we've got 6 sheep.
Yeah.
Now we make more money out of the sheep from their byproducts than we do actually. Say, for example, if we took these, if we took our 6 sheep to slaughter, we'd probably have about £30 each for them, right?
Yeah.
So that's 180 quid, right?
Yeah.
But we have sold £150 worth of sheep manure, right? So we're already making a profit.
Yeah.
We've also made money out of selling the wool, so we've made a profit out of that. So
it's more long term, isn't it?
and basically Baldrick's feathers, we make money out of selling his feathers. So and we've got, to be honest with you, if we slaughtered all our chickens, right, we make about we worked out that we make £1,000 on selling eggs a year, right? If we killed every single chicken, that would be like £4 each, and we got 30 chickens. You can work out that's nowhere near the amount of money that we get for eggs. So when you talk the byproduct from animals, live animals, is far. And to be honest with you, for example,
they've got to eat though. You've got to eat. You're vegetarian, but
you've got to eat. But you cull a mature animal, right?
Yeah.
And obviously bloodletting some of these animals, it's a warm liquid, right? It's good for making soups and all the rest of it, right? So why would you want to kill an animal when you can obtain so much from it when it's alive?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
and to be honest with you, in Scandinavia, the warm blood of some of these animals is seen as a great delicacy and a great honor.
Black pudding.
Exactly. And Del, I just received your money. I'm gonna call off the lads. Right. So what we're gonna do, I want to Goff, are you there, my Goff?
No.
I think
he's
you
having a
upset me,
break.
man.
He'll be back now.
I'm here. I'm here. I'm here.
So yeah, Goff, Goff, if it wasn't for you, my heart would bleed.
Your heart.
My heart. I tell you what, my heart goes on and on for Goff. It does. It does.
You miss him, do you?
Yeah, I miss him in particular. I miss the hugs he used to give me.
Ah.
Right. So anyway, back to the excavation. So what we were talking about before we had that little bit of a break. Obviously, there's new work going on within the landscape. 1977, we've got the excavations associated with the landfill site. The team returned there in 1985, 1989. We're actually looking at flints now from the site. We haven't done this. So what we're talking about is not only getting a glimpse of the organic nature of the site, but obviously the non-organic nature of the site, and obviously the investigation of the site within the wider landscape setting of Lake Flixton. So obviously what we're looking at now is some flint tools. And again, missed in the lectures, owls themselves are making holes in leather, microliths for hunting or scraping, adzes for
You want to put?
agriculture.
Are you putting images? Images.
Oh, right. Thanks. I didn't put the image. Thank you. I'm glad you told me that. Right. Sorry. Thank you. Appreciate that. Do appreciate that. Screen. Start now. Good. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. That saved the lecture. So here we go. We've got owls on the right hand. Owls in the right hand corner there. We've got microliths. Microliths can be used for anything. Decorative, it can be used for hunting, it can be used for scraping, it can be used for cutting, it can be used for, if people did do, we know that people back then were surgically aware. Adzes themselves for ploughing. You've got other blade scrapers, you've got gravers for making marks and things. All these objects which we completely miss in any lecture. We miss this in any Star Carr lecture. So there it is. Appreciate this. So the team, Nikki Milner, revisited the site, the University of York. I know University of Sheffield's been involved as well. University of Manchester, Chantal from Manchester, and University of Chester, another great archaeological university. Barry Taylor visited the site in the 2000s. And the work and reinvestigation of Graham Clark's excavations is ongoing. And excavating a dry land archaeological site, a dry land structure. There's more to just the site than just the organic stuff. There's dry land stuff as well. What's that about? Let's look at it next week. So more, again, keep this on the screen because it's a good backdrop. Most significantly, recent geochemical investigations have demonstrated that the preservation conditions from 1948 to now have deteriorated. Well, they would do. The site, the archaeology is being looked at, covered back over, looked at, covered up back over, and bacteria gets in each time. But they've got to do that because the groundwater is gradually being drained away, which is a shame. The result of this is that any organic remaining organic artifacts will far less be informative as people re-look at them. But they're learning so many new things from this organic material, and obviously getting closer dates. Hopefully we can get hone in on the precise dates for certain things at the site, certain posts, certain stages, certain whatever, when trees are being felled and all the rest of it. With more scientific knowledge, this is why they're continually going back, re-excavating, covering up, re-excavating. But obviously, the more acidity due to the changes in ground level is obviously something that's occurring to destroy what's there to interpret. One thing that we have ignored throughout the entire lecture is coming back to, and again, we'll look at that plan next week, all the evidence of sites at there, which is going to be a brain-boggling thing for me to look at. And obviously more of these objects. That's the base of an antler there, base of an antler, and all of these really well drawn, really well drawn. These harpoon points, these antler points as we've got there, serrated antler points. And obviously, if we go back, there it is. We're going to leave this in the background for a few seconds because we're going to be getting a lot of this next week. A decorated pendant, the Star Carr pendant, thought to be the oldest known Mesolithic art, found in 2015. Again, it's right to go back and excavate these sites. New things are being found. So this is about 11,000 years old, and has been on display at Yorkshire Museum since 2016. An amazing object that we're going to study and look at next week. So going back again, there it is, but not doing any more of that today. And I'm actually coming towards the end of the lecture today. But what I'd like to do is, again, we've got so many images. Look at these little microliths there, loads of them, great. So again, not to forget these. So Graham Clark, the original excavator, believed the Mesolithic people would have lived on a brushwood platform on the edge of the former Lake Flixton, but that was the evidence he had. Again, challenging this, looking at this next week. Recent excavations have revealed that people lived on the dry land upslope of the lake, and various activities were carried out at the lake edge on a platform or other buildings used at different stages for different reasons. This is again the big debate that we look at next week. There is much debate about the time of year the site was occupied. Now this is another point, right? Let's sort of go with this. Maybe look at these objects. Love them. 200 of these or so at the site. So there's much debate about the time of year the site was occupied. Mesolithic people hunted a number of animals, including red and roe deer, elk, aurochs, wild boar. How did they hunt them? Using these or other objects that we haven't found yet, or just sharpened bits of wood or whatever. However these animals were caught and harvested, you've got the various seasonal assessments of when these animals would have been available to us. And as the site was occupied over several hundred years, many hundred years, we may have seen seasonal practices varied over time. So the problem is that the point is with that, and this will be answered more next week than anything, a bit blurred there, is that seasons changed over that 800, 900 years that people were at the site. So they may not have had real clear seasons at the beginning. So people may have lived there all the time. People may have lived there seasonally at the beginning, and the people may have then lived there all the time. We don't really know, but the animals and the food available and flora and fauna available at the site tells us that people use the site over wide periods of time, of different periods and so on. But going back to these here, oh, there we go. Going back to these antler frontlets, this is another thing. We're not going to be doing this next week, actually, because this is the thing that everyone does when they do at Carr. We won't do much more of this next week. So it's been suggested that the antler frontlets were used as a hunting disguise or in some form of ritual practice. Recent work suggests that these, along with other objects made from red deer antler, appear to have been respectfully deposited at the lake edge due to the spiritual significance of red deer to the people who occupied the site. Well, obviously, I don't deny it. They must have revered these animals. They must have had some focus on these animals. And sort of we're concluding with this today. Other experts have re-examined the animal bones located at the site. From the wide range, they found strong evidence to suggest that the site was used only in late spring and summer. Oh, well, how does that affect when we look at the buildings next week? Evidence that the cull of red and roe deer was based towards 3 and 1 year old animals, respectively. What does that mean? Revision of available meat, reduction in scale of occupation. No bias towards hunting of male red deer, and tentatively suggests that the site was used as a hunting camp. If it was used as a hunting camp, where did they live full time? That's my thing. And all of those questions, all of them will be answered next week. They really will be, but maybe not. The one thing I would say is that I disagree that it was temporary. I've always disagreed that it was temporary since I started doing these lectures back in 2007. I've always disagreed with that, even when we only had this evidence available to talk about. And one thing I would say, they might just, like we argued with the limpet shells, we said, well, are they eating limpets all year round? We worked out that they were. Or are they eating limpets seasonally? We worked out they're probably eating limpets all year round, different levels of limpets at different times. Maybe they're eating red meat at one time of the year and eating fish another time of the year, right? So that then goes against the evidence that they weren't there full time. And the one final thing that I will say before we finish today, right, is this. If you're living there in the summer months only, particularly in the later stages of Carr, the site would get very inclement and very smelly with everything around and so on. Lots of flies and mozzies about. Or was not that the same situation back then? We don't know. So what we are going to do is we're going to stop the screen share. Okay. And Goff. Oh, we're going to go to Goff. He's on the screen. Any questions, Goff?
No question. That was very interesting.
look forward to next week's lecture. Thank you.
I do as well, because it answers so many questions, Goff, and the pendant. Everyone keep their questions brief. So, Adele, anything you'd like to ask?
Yeah, I did a study on this with an online course, and it's one of my favourite places and has taught me a lot.
And more next week, Del, and particularly the pendant, which I know you want to do. So keep this space till next week. Don't let us down. You're on next week. Thanks, Del. Right. Anyone want to say something in Lantwit Major, whether it's Steve, Jim, Keith, Kathy, Karen, or Chris? Anything you'd like to say there in Lantwit Major?
Just checking, are you still coming here next week? You said you were coming first week in July.
Yeah, I before everything changed two weeks ago, I wanted to come live, but I've worked out it's going to cost me £80 in diesel to get down. So I financially, I can't afford to come down next week. It's just inhibitive. I can't financially, I can't get to. Fuel this end is £2.06 a litre for diesel, and I can't afford it. I know that's disappointing. I would have really loved to have come down next week, but I can't because of the money. I do apologise. I can't. I'm glad you asked that. I'm glad you asked that. When things change, I will be able to, but at this stands, fuel is just inhibitive. I can't do it financially. I'm glad you asked that. And I know it's disappointing, but financially, I can't do it. Anything else you want to ask in Lantwit?
No other questions?
No, nothing, thanks.
Don't forget, we got the online class tonight, so that's at 6 o'clock. More following the line. And Anne, you're the last one to ask questions today, so keep it brief. No,
Yes, silent, Anne.
it's so bloody brief. We can't hear her. Go on. We can't hear you.
Anne, you're on
You silly
blackout.
woman. If I insult her more, she might get it. We can't hear you, you deaf bat.
Is it moorland? You know, was it moorland sort of, or what? The moors? Is it like the moors?
No. Initially, right? Get this picture, right? For next week, we've got a large lake, right? We don't know if the lake's still filling, right? It's a large lake.
I mean now.
I've got to get there. Right, so basically it clogs up, right? And then it becomes a peat bog. It became moorland. Now it's mainly farmland. It's farmed.
Oh, that's good. No, because I was thinking about, you know, Goldcliff and, you know, the River Severn. We wouldn't be surprised if we found some sort of Mesolithic settlement there one day.
Close inland. I completely agree with you. Yeah, I agree. But
That's going to be great. Thank you.
That's going to be hidden under all the sort of wet levels and all the rest of it. But it could be there.
Okay, then.
Right, so
great.
Del wants to say something quick. Go on.
Yeah, just quickly, I gave Jessica a print off of the course materials that I had, because it doesn't just do the course, it also gives access to lots of other stuff.
And Del, can you try and get me a link for that so I can share it for next week? Share it for next week, Del. Share it for next week. I need it for next week.
I will do.
Okay, lovely.
Okay, so if nobody's got anything else to say, if Goff, Anne, Del,
well, I won't be here next week.
Okay, thanks for telling us. James, Keith, Kathy, Karen, Chris, Steve, Karen. If nobody's got anything else to say, I'm going to call it a day. So thank you for joining us this week, and I will see you all next week. Sorry I can't come down to Lantwit, but I will see you all next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Oh,
Bye.
there we go. Go on. There we go. Take care. Cheers, guys.
Bye.
See you next week.
Bye.
Take care, lovelies. Bye. Bye-bye. Cheers, guys. Cheers, Del. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye. See you, Del. Thanks for your contribution. See you then.
I can't switch off.
Oh, God.
Oh,
right. Yeah. Okay. Oh, there you go. Anyway, an hour and 57 minutes, so that's good. Slightly bit rushed there, but no, it wasn't. I don't think it was. I wanted to cover it all. I want to get it succinct. Right, so what I'm going to say now is that, you know, we've got lots of perspectives and ways of looking at that. Sometimes I feel a bit guilty even criticising Graham Clark because he's one of the forefathers. I don't think I really criticised him. We are having a short break, they said. We are having a short break in Lantwit. We're having a short break in Lantwit. So, hang on, I can't get the chat off. We're having a short break in Lantwit. Go. Bye. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you very much. I'll see you next week.